seems to be a controversial topic online right now. Everybody's talking about it, from public figures to politicians to everybody's favorite Lil Boosie, right? Probably not everybody's favorite, but
Boosie.
yeah, there's a lot of talk going around right now about Leah Thomas. Leah Thomas, man, the Penn swimmer who recently just won an NCAA national championship while competing in the women's competition as a transgender woman. And you got a lot of people comparing this to a lot of different things. You even had some publications say this should be lauded like Jackie Robinson. You've had other people saying, get out the pool, man. In the words of Lil Boosie. So there's two total ends of the spectrum on this topic, and I just want to see what you guys think about this a little bit before I give my thoughts on that. So Scruff, I'm gonna start with you.
Man, I'll start with saying it's a slippery slope, man. It's a very much a slippery slope because when I watch Leah get out of the pool and I get her to do the interview, you know what I mean? Like, first glance, she resembles, she has some masculine traits, to some degree. Um, and there are like for girl that won second place is actually, she's mad. She feels like she got a beef. So she's challenging for a rule change. So I think it's very controversial. So to me, I don't feel one way or another to say that like she needs to get out of the pool. I feel like you need to respect everybody's gender identity, and like I think sport is about competing. So like it has to be fair for everybody. So like I think due diligence has to be there. I don't know what the sciences are behind everything, but like I'll say that like there has to be some type of measuring between it, and from my understanding there is, with all that stuff, but I'm not upset about it, you know what I mean? But I do think that there's reason to be speculative and watching this very closely because we are walking the line. When we're talking about sport, we're talking about competitive advantage. That's very much a part of sport. And that is the key. So I think it's getting controversy because it deservedly so. Now the whole comparing it to like Jackie Robinson thing, that's borderline blasphemous. This is borderline blasphemous. I don't know why people always want to compare the struggles of one group to a group that was, literally slaves. But it's a crazy comparison. But Leah Thomas, I mean, I applaud her for being herself, choosing what she feel like is right for her, and competing in the sport that she loves. So I'm not going to take any joy away from Leah Thomas and what she's accomplished. But the speculation I think is deserved because this is very much uncharted territory, and I think people are going to feel one way or the other, and we're all really still figuring this out.
Yeah, nah, facts, and then I think that it's a real two sided. I think when people are thinking about the way they feel about this, right? I think that you've got, and I don't think anybody. I try to stay away from who's right and who's wrong, right? Because that doesn't really get you anywhere. Where gets you places is understanding different perspectives and being able to put them on the table to come to your own, right? And I think that on one hand, you've got a lot of people who are concerned with the fairness of the sport. Right? You got a lot of people who are solely concerned with fairness. Is it fair or is it not fair? And on the other hand, you got a group of people who are concerned with representation and concerned with, is everyone being represented to their fullest desires? Are they being represented the way they want to be represented in different situations? And I don't think either side is necessarily wrong. I think it's more or less like we just got to figure out how we can do both at the same time. And if that's what if the NCAA is taking those necessary steps to do both at the same time, there shouldn't be anything wrong with it, right? There shouldn't be anyone that sees anything wrong with it. But at the same time, what are the qualifications, and how can we make, if the NCAA has taken those steps, how can we make people more clear about those steps that were taken to ensure fairness, right? I think like I was reading something the other day and it was talking about the differences between animals and humans. I'm not comparing anybody to animals. Just give me a second. But like dogs, dogs, they operate nose first, you know what I mean, ears second, eyes last, right? So if a dog comes up to something, the first thing it's going to do is smell. Then it's going to rely on its sense of hearing. Then very last, it's going to rely on its sense of sight, right? It relies on that sight sense very last. But as humans, we tend to rely on that sight sense first. That's usually the first sense that we use to try to figure out what things are, right? So the optics, when someone who's using their sense of sight first, when they see Leah Thomas, they're immediately going to think, physical appearance. That's where their mind's immediately going to go, and that's going to initially inform their entire judgment, right? But because we're not using any of those other senses, that's all we can think of, and I think that is a larger issue within people. Now, when you start to look at some of the times and some of the things like that, when you start to look at the fact that the time that Leah Thomas won with was only fractions of a second off of the winning time from last year in these same championships, then it leads you to wonder how much of an advantage does she have. But then on the other end of the spectrum, you hear that she's been doing these treatments since I think 2018 or 2019, which would be what, about 3 years of doing these hormone treatments. So then it makes you wonder: is 3 years enough to fully make you on a level playing field with a woman? If you were a man for all this time, if you were operating as a man for all this time, and at the same time, it's like, does 18 years as operating as a man give you a certain level of muscular muscles and just in general? Like, what does that change about your body composition? Does that change your composition to the point where you got an advantage? You got an inherent advantage when the competition starts. I, for one, think there's a lot of reasons why we have women in men's sports. To the contrary beliefs of some men, a lot of those reasons were because that it was a time where women were outperforming men in certain competitions, namely like shooting competitions and things like that, where men were like, hold on, we got to make a whole women's category because they felt threatened. But at the same time, there's other reasons that's done too. And the physical component of this cannot be overlooked when we're having this discussion. It just can't be overlooked. And I think anyone that overlooks that is selling people short, and it could hurt competition overall. Rome, I see you shaking your head at some of the comments, man. What you think? Like, you're muted.
Shout out to my man in the comments, bro. Like that was right where I was about to get at. Like, so my whole question is this: like, it's fine that there's a transgender person competing. I have zero issue with that. I think there needs to be more of that. I'm all about equality. But my question is, why not have her compete with the male competitors if she comes up too dominant against the females? Like, I do think it has a lot to do with ego. I think they, put her with the females and had her win in that way and deal with the females complaining, as opposed to having your best male athlete or one of your best male athletes potentially lose to a transgender athlete. They might not have the best reaction to that. But I agree with my man in the comments about the NCAA. I think Leah probably should have still had to compete with the males this go around. I know, like you were just saying, Bryce. Has there been enough treatment? I think they do hormone levels, hormone testing. She passed whatever test that she needed to pass, so she got to compete with the females. So that's fair based off what the rules are. But like you said, this is all happening in real time. Scruff, I think you were the one that said we're figuring it out as it happens. So I mean, maybe there needs to be an adjustment to the testing, the rules. At the end of the day, I could see how the other girls could have a gripe, but I could also see how Leah's side could have a gripe. So kind of like what Scruff said is where I kind of lean. We're learning on the fly with this. I wouldn't compare it to Jackie Robinson, but I would say we are in the middle of the integration of transgenders into mainstream sports.
No, I
So
agree.
why not let's just give them their own category? That way, no one's getting affected by nothing. All transgender versus all transgender, like all male versus all male, like all female versus all female. That
That
way, no
seems
one, no
fair.
one stepping on each
But
other's
is there
toes
going to
at
be
this point.
enough? Is there enough
the
to
biggest problem with
qualify?
that though, the biggest problem with that, to be honest, is like, it's like goes to the issue of like, people that have a huge issue with transgender using the bathrooms and wanting them to have their own bathrooms, right? It's like if they truly identify as one side or the other, or one gender versus another, they don't want to have to be in their own category. They want to be able to be treated as equal. And I think, Rome, you bring up a good point. It's like, this is all happening in real time, right? And we're at the very beginning of this. I don't think this really comes full circle until it happens in reverse, right? For example, right now we have a transgender woman competing with the women. But until we have a transgender man competing amongst the men and proving that it goes both ways, I feel like then we'll start to find a middle. We may be able to start to find a middle ground in this. And if that can never happen, if that never does happen in a sport that has a lot to do with physicality of some sort, or then maybe it is unfair. Maybe not, but maybe, right? Like we never get to a point where we have a transgender man that's good enough to, let's say, play, I don't know, name that sport. You know what I mean? Like
NFL. I mean, think
NFL,
about it. Think
maybe
about
not
it.
even
How?
NFL, but like even track, right? Like,
No, I mean, yeah, I mean, maybe the NFL. Maybe I'm shooting a little bit too big, but
but no,
I think
you get the point.
that would be monumental. That'd be monumental. The
That would be
first
monumental.
transgender NFL
I don't
player would
think it's
be.
impossible,
And then the thing about it is, like, it's not to say that's impossible, but like, yo, we're not gonna let
depending on
somebody that's
position.
not good enough compete. So the main
Yeah,
key is you would have to be good enough to compete, no matter who you are. So
yeah.
like, if a transgender male can prove that they're good enough to compete with all the other men, then I think we start to really break barriers. But because I think right now we're dealing with a transgender woman who was formerly a man competing against women, it's an optic that is kind of hard to like take. Like I said, people are using their eyes first. You know what I mean? So it's like that optic is really hard to get past. I feel like. So we'll see if that's ever able to happen. I don't know.
Well, I mean, one thing we touched on before the show started was the and I didn't know about this. UNG was schooling me on it. Was the fight between the transgender men and
It was a
your
transgender woman. It was a
yeah, it
transgender
was a
woman.
transgender woman against another woman. So, that's a combat sport. That's about as rough as it's gonna get. That's about as brutal as you're gonna get. They're literally fighting each other. You could potentially kill someone. And people complain about that, male on male, female on female. So if they're gonna start crossing over in sports like that, then I think it's only a matter of time. But like you said, it's gonna be about the talent. It's gonna be about are you good enough to actually compete? Because that's what's gonna trump everything else.
Nah, facts. And there's never if there never comes a time where a trans man is able to compete with the men, then it makes the Leah Thomas situation look even more unfair. But if that time comes where a trans man is just as good as the other men, then it's like, okay, maybe it all is the same. But back to that mixed martial arts match between the trans woman versus the other woman, it was rough, to be honest. I mean, because in my opinion, the trans woman had a lot worse technique. In my opinion, her technique was horrible, and the woman was just jabbing her, giving her that work, honestly. But the trans woman was able to just eat the punches, and eventually was able to overpower her, get her on the ground, and it was all she wrote. And it's like, I don't know if that had anything to do with her being, a trans woman. I don't know, the optic, once again, the optic didn't look that great. So it's just going to take time. I think Scruff and Rome, you guys both kind of hinted at we're in the beginning of this. It's just going to take time for this really to show itself, to prove itself out. But right now, I feel like the optic is a little hard for a lot of people to handle, especially traditionalists. And it may take some time for that optic to kind of get into people's brains and really ease some of these concerns. But right now, it's a lot for people to take, and I'm not sure that it is fair or isn't fair. I really don't know right now.
Yeah, it's fair.
G, what you think about this situation, G?
And like I said, man, just split them up, man. So that way everybody has the right to their own records. That's why. I mean, that's why we don't have women compete with men.
Yeah,
Vice versa, men compete with women. It's just like when you just talked about the UFC fight. There's a thing called man strength. Like you saw out of nowhere, it kicked in for the for the transgender athlete, and he just destroyed that woman that just got pummeled, and it's just like you just see like yo, there's a difference between women and man strength. Like a good kick up because of genetics. Like, you can't play around with genetics to a certain point. You can cut pirates and try change it, maneuver it, but end of the day, genetics come into play with some of these sports. That's why certain things happen. But like I said, I get it. No one wants to be like, well, you want to get categorized for yourself, but at the end of the day, like, yo, so when do we say no to anything?
Good point. I
Like, so
mean,
we're just gonna let anything slide? Like,
yeah,
that's why the transgender men that were formerly women do. Like, you don't hear them compete too much with men because they can't keep up with natural men's strength. Like, I'm not gonna sit here and say that they're bad, but they just can't compete with the men.
nah, I mean, you make a good point. I mean, because like when you talk about genetics and body composition, like men have larger lungs than women. You know what I mean? Like I don't know if like hormone replacement therapy it's not gonna shrink anybody's lung size, is it? I don't know. Maybe I need to do more research on that, but that's something that the crowd that says
Yeah.
it's not fair could easily use as an argument. So it's like
All
it's so
right.
many different sides of the argument that I think it's going to be hard for those two sides to ever find a middle ground. And all that can be done as far as the sports go is try to make it as fair as possible and put as many false fail safes as possible to have people comfortable with it. But the optic is going to take a long time for anybody to come around the optic. And I think the best thing that could happen is having a trans male prove they can compete with the men. Because then it's like, okay, well, this goes both ways. It's not just trans women coming in dominating women. You know what I mean? So it's like I think that's got to happen for that object to kind of
Maybe in like track and field.
maybe, but
Yeah.
like I don't know. Maybe in like I think it had to be like long distance, probably. You know what I mean? Like I've actually
Yeah,
read something
right.
that in like long distance swimming, that women have fared better than men, in a lot of long distance swimming. So I don't know how that works, or but I've heard that. There's also been like rifle shooting, where women have fared better than men. Even to the point that they banned women from the Olympics years and years ago. I think this was in like the 40s, 1940s. They banned women from being able to compete in skeet shooting because like a woman. It was around the wartime, and there was a woman who was like pretty much becoming a beast at it, and they ended up first banning women from it, then giving them a whole separate category where they shot less targets than the men, which makes no sense because it's shooting. It shouldn't be less targets for anybody. But
Yeah, you know what that is. They don't want the women to learn how to use a gun too much because then they're gonna end up shooting us.
yeah, or they just didn't want to feel like inferior. But
Yeah,
it's
it's some
it's
ego
interesting.
shit.
Yeah,
That's what it sounds like to me.
yeah,
It actually sounds like something that like I could actually see. Like that makes a lot of sense. That I
yeah,
can see a woman being really good at that because like that's really like about precision more than
yeah,
anything.
yeah.
Hey, you never want your lady handling a bigger gun than yours, man.
Whoa there, wrong. Hey, I'm let you have that one, bro. I don't know where you going with that, my boy. But I'm gonna go with yes. I'm gonna go with yeah. I don't know if that was a yes or
That
no
reminds me of
question.
that small Harry comment you made earlier. Speaking of that,
Oh man.
Kenny Pickett. That's why Kenny Pickett's third on my list. Because if you worried about your hands being small, then you just the wrong quarterback for me. You know what I mean?
Hey man, well I hope we brought some sort of light to that conversation. I've been looking at a lot of these sports talk shows and the debate shows, and they're afraid to touch this. They're afraid to touch this topic, man. But we sports for the culture. We don't duck from any topics, and we give our opinions, and I hope our opinions surprise some of you all out there because I think a lot of people have this opinion of our show sports for the culture, and I think that how in depth we were just able to get with that opinion, it might surprise some people. I hope it does. I hope it makes some people open their own perspectives and dig a little deeper into what could be in the future.